automotive retail is shifting, and the momentum is growing here in the UK. Across the globe, Tekion is redefining dealerships with its AI-native platform, built specifically for the automotive industry. Tekion is the industry's first end-to-end cloud platform, not just software, but a true AI-native platform that connects every part of your dealership: CRM, sales, service, accounting, and more. With Tekion, AI isn't bolted on. It is built into every workflow, helping you work faster and smarter and deliver transparent customer experiences. And because trust and security are foundational, you can scale AI with confidence without fragmented third-party systems. Knowing your business, your customers, and your data are protected, this unifying AI-powered platform solves real dealership challenges. Faster, more relevant lead responses, smarter service operations, streamlined accounting with less manual effort and quicker month-end close, and a modern customer journey. In North America, Tekion has become the fastest growing AI platform in automotive, trusted by thousands of dealers and leading OEMs. That innovation has now arrived in the UK. The future of automotive retail isn't just digital. It's intelligent, unified, faster, smarter, AI-powered. It's Tekion.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this session on cybersecurity with an undeniable and expected emphasis on AI, brought into focus really by a homegrown problem, obviously at JLR and more widely M&S. We've got about 30 minutes of presentation time, and then at the end 15 minutes of Q&A. I've got some questions, but it'd be much more interesting if you could put some to our audience of specialists. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, starting on my right. Louise.
Louise Sadler. I'm a Privacy and Data Protection Manager at BDO.
Hi everyone, my name is Kaspar Euvrard. I'm a director in BDO's cybersecurity team. I lead our managed security services capability, but I've had 20 years of experience doing advisory, implementations, and managed services.
Hello, I'm Ben Donaldson. I'm the CEO and founder of RepGuard. We're a consultancy that focuses on human cyber risk.
Hi, I'm Teza Mukkavilli. I'm the CIO of Tekion, the video that you just watched. We are an end-to-end automotive retail with a lot of SaaS and AI built into it.
Thank you. So do Louise and Kaspar, do you want to take the floor with your presentation?
Yeah, absolutely. If we could just scoot on a couple of slides. I think Ben's slide is up at the moment. Keep going.
Okay, it might be me first.
It might be me
first. I will go first. Is that okay? Okay. I'm going to stand up because I get more animated and kind of get into it. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Ben, as I just mentioned. I'm the founder of RepGuard Security, relatively new consultancy focusing on something that actually hasn't kind of been something that's new that's come into the industry more recently. Human cyber risk. We specialize in helping organizations, very helpful, thank you, through and understand their reputation and protecting reputation from a cyber perspective. I've worked across industry, Dyson, more recently at Tesco, worked with government, and now contracting. I can't actually say the name, but they make cars go really, really fast around a track, and other government organizations at the moment. My aim today isn't to scare you. I think it's more to help you understand an area of cyber that often gets overlooked or gets kind of parked to the side. And that would be kind of human cyber risk, or what it was traditionally known as security awareness. I'm going to start with a brief story. Once upon a time, there was a fantasy world where organizations trained people in cybersecurity. They did all their annual training. They sent phishing simulations. Don't we all love them? And they checked all of the compliance boxes that regulators, ICO, whoever say you need to check. They made sure they passed all of their assessments, they got their certifications, and they carried on with ordinary business. But one day, the inevitable happened. Cyber criminals worked their way into the business. They socially engineered their way in, stole data, held the company to ransom and asked for millions in payment. The organization turned around and said, "But Mr. Regulator, we did everything you asked. We trained our people, we checked all the compliance boxes, we even fished people, and we sent them really hard ones that we couldn't help them to see." The regulating bodies and the ICO turned around and said, "Well, don't worry, if you did your mandatory training and you fished your people, no matter how hard, don't worry. We all turn a blind eye to it and you can crack on as usual." In reality, that isn't what happens, as you all know. There are fines, there's reputational damage, and there's considerable operational and financial costs. On the side here, you can see some of the enforcement action taken by the ICO in 2024. I'm not going to read it out, but you can kind of see the scale of the things that are happening. And those of you who follow this relatively closely, you'd seen that BA a couple of years ago got fined an incredible amount of money for a data breach that happened. And this is just one of hundreds of stories that are happening all the time. So why do we have a reliance on compliance? We tick obligatory boxes, and we believe that that will absolutely solve the problem. But it doesn't tackle the issue at hand, and the issue that a lot of cybersecurity teams are struggling with, which is reducing cybersecurity risk. We also assume that from a people perspective, because people are aware, they actually care. These two statistics might shock a few of you. The first one is a study that I was actually a part of at one of my previous organizations that found that only 15% of people who complete their security awareness training that they might do annually, every 6 months, quarterly, actually go on to change their behavior. And behavior change is the thing that needs to happen here, because it's in their everyday life. So why do we think that just training people is actually reducing risk? The other statistic on here is showing that in 2024, 95%, and I think it's slightly lower than this because there's a variety of different people who are reporting on this, but 95-ish% of data breaches were tied back to the human element and human error. Recognizing and analyzing poor security behaviors is crucial for effective risk management, and something really needs to change. Don't get me wrong, I don't believe that there is a silver bullet that is going to magically change this overnight and make people really aware and care and really secure. But quantifying and understanding the human element is a step in the right direction. I'm going to help you understand what I'm on about by showing you some of the barriers that people face every day when it comes to human cyber risk. But I'm going to use a slightly more sweet and an approachable example. My clicker's not working. Oh, there we go. In March this year, my fiance and I welcomed home our new puppy called Dexter. He's quite sweet. He's a bit bigger now, but he causes a lot of terror at home. There were a few things that when we brought him home that we were told, don't do this, you must do this, you've got to do this. And I'm going to analyze some of the risks that we took as new puppy owners. So the first one was that I left him alone for 10 minutes in the living room. He's usually kept into the kitchen where there's hard floors, there's limited things to chew. Because I needed to make a sandwich for our next meeting. So I left him in the living room, ran into the kitchen, did my own thing. Awfully silent in the living room. The other one was that I came back from a run, I was pretty tired. I really couldn't be bothered to move my shoes. So I took them off at the back door, left them there in the kitchen, and cracked on with whatever I was doing. Anyway, again, silence in the kitchen, which is rare when you have a puppy. He's usually charging around the house. You could say that I had been trained, or people had told me, don't leave your shoes out because they'll get chewed. Don't leave them in places where there are things that they can eat. So you could say I'd been trained, but the reality is there are other factors at play. And this was the result. A chewed pair of quite expensive runners. Now, let's talk about the equivalent types of risks that I commonly see people taking almost on a daily basis. I know I shouldn't click this link, but I'm in a rush, or I'm actually really intrigued as to what is behind it, because it mentions my pay slip, or it mentions something to do with finance, or a reward. Yeah, I reuse my passwords, but I'll change it another time, or they're not interested in me, I only work in this department. I know I shouldn't let somebody tailgate me into the office, but they were holding 2 cups of coffee, or they had a cute puppy in their hands. So I was going to let them in. I'll hold the door open for them. Haven't seen their badge. And the last one is one that I hear quite a lot, which is I keep getting these really irritating pop-ups that tell me I need to update my laptop or my computer, but I've got a meeting in 5 minutes, and I know that this update is going to take however long. I need to go make a coffee. So I'm going to ignore it. These are kind of the non-compliant but aware users. They know they probably shouldn't have a weak password. They know that they should probably update their device. They know the risks. They have been trained in their annual training. But pressure, convenience, habit all came into play. I debated for a little while about putting this in because I know it's all that most of the industry have been talking about. But I wanted to kind of use it as a case study because it almost reinforces my point here. And to set some additional context, how many of you are aware of how the JLR breach actually kind of came about in the first place? Show of hands, anybody? Yeah, a couple of people. It's actually, they haven't fully disclosed it yet, but through various conversations and the news, funnily enough, it's becoming clear that social engineering and the human element was at the heart and the stem of where this attack came from. Social engineering is one of the biggest problems, and I was having a conversation with Kaspar just before this about AI and how that is enhancing social engineering. But it's becoming more and more of a problem, and phishing, vishing, smishing, I hate to say it, but quishing, QR code phishing, don't hate me, are becoming really, really big problems. But this kind of, in this case, with JLR, they managed to steal credentials for, I think it was Jira or Atlassian, by social engineering some of the employees and gaining their credentials, which gave them that initial access. So it was at the heart, it was right at the start of where this breach came from. You all obviously know the knock-on effect of that breach, and it's actually been hailed as one of the most devastating or damaging cyber attacks in UK history. So what can we do? I'm going to talk briefly now about measuring security behaviors and individual security behaviors. And I'm not saying this is looking just at phishing and training, because I've banged on about them being mostly irrelevant. But using integrations and insights that give you tangible data on where your risk is, and then it points you in the right direction of how to reduce it. There are obviously platforms out there, there are various people doing things, but a lot of you, and if you work in cyber, I apologize if I'm teaching you to suck eggs, but you've got the likes of CrowdStrike, Microsoft Defender, Microsoft Intune that can provide data from people out in your organization and how they are behaving, how they are interacting with various systems. And creating security scores off the back of those is a really interesting way of visualizing it. A really simple model. It's a pretty easy traffic light protocol. Red is bad. Amber is okay, probably should be looked at. Green is, you know what, you're doing okay. But by measuring individual behaviors, you start to see individual departmental risk insights, but also where, from a risk output perspective, you are most vulnerable. So it might be malware or ransomware. It might be account compromise. It might be data leakage. At least having a way to see where you are most vulnerable is better than where you are now, which is most likely a finger in the air of, oh, we think we're pretty bad at this, or we think we're pretty good at this. Measuring it is a really important part of the puzzle. Like I said, there are organizations out there that do this and bring in all the integrations and collect it and spit it out to a great dashboard. But there are things that you can do internally without the need to pay for those types of things. So the outcome. kind of assessing these behaviors gives you two clear kind of, I guess, value areas. One, for the colleagues, you're getting point of risk interventions here. So has anybody ever kind of used Gmail before and tried to send an email to a person that you actually didn't mean to send it to? You've got 4 Georges in your contact list and you add the wrong George. Gmail now prompts you and says, you don't usually email this person. Did you mean this George? That is a point of risk intervention. If that was something at the bottom of the email that was confidential or private to the company, and you were about to mail it out to the wrong George, Gmail has intervened there. There are so many different interventions and what we call nudges that can point you and push you in the right direction to avoid potential risk. The other one is education based on their own susceptibility. Put your hand up here if you've probably scrolled through your security awareness training. Get through it as quickly as you can, click to the end. I have. I've absolutely done it. I just don't see the value in it. But if education is based on your specific risk or your specific vulnerability, you're more likely to want to pay attention to it and understand, actually, you know what? This is going to help me not just at work, but also with my family or at home. For the business, operational time saves. I've spent a long time looking at formula and kind of trying to calculate, okay, well, if people are no longer at the point of risk causing issues, so the Security Operations Center is suddenly having flooded with different incidents, the time saved and the cost saving of that is now something that businesses are really interested in. And we've seen businesses turn around and go, this is incredible, you're saving us hundreds of thousands of pounds in resource costs that we're now not having to spend on people dealing with incidents. And the other one is demonstrable risk reduction, something that the industry has struggled with for a long time in being able to say, yeah, we've actually managed to reduce our cyber risk from this to this. We've gone from red to amber or to green. And that's really, really valuable, especially at the moment when boards, execs are probably turning around and being like, what can we do? How do we reduce this risk? I'm going to close on these 3 points, and I'm slightly over. But why do you need to quantify, or why should businesses start to quantify their human cyber risk? Firstly, a behavior-focused approach kind of really leads to a more resilient organization. And hopefully, and again, I'm not saying that this is going to cure all your problems, but you don't appear in the media like Jaguar Land Rover have done for the last couple of months, or M&S, or the Co-op. Second one is you're still meeting regulatory compliance. I'm not saying you should can all your training or stop doing phishing simulations, but at least having this, alongside what you're doing, you're still meeting regulatory compliance. But also targeted training and interventions mean that resource can be more efficiently spread elsewhere and used elsewhere, and you're cost saving for the business. It's very rare that you find a cybersecurity department or team that can say they save costs for the business. It's usually just a spending count. So, I'll finish by just saying that there's an opportunity here, not just to surface risk, but to reduce it in real time. I'll wrap up there. Please do, if you have any questions, if you would like to speak to me afterwards, please do grab me. My email's on the screen. There's a link to my LinkedIn profile there. I'd be happy to help. Regardless of the size of your organization, I want to help push this forwards and move it in the right direction. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Ben. Now to Louise and Kaspar from BDO.
Thank you so much. Kaspar and I are going to do a bit of a double act this afternoon. As I mentioned, I tend to work in privacy and data protection, so I'm going to be focusing more on that side, and then Kaspar's going to be speaking more to some of the kind of trends and vulnerabilities that we've been seeing as a result of some recent high-profile cyber attacks. So just as a bit of background and context, I think the starting point for us, and Ben has already touched on some of these issues, is that cyber attacks and data breaches are very often inextricably interlinked. I think we only need to reflect on some of the incidents that have hit the headlines in the last 12 months or so to know that actually when we're thinking about these issues, that there's no separating the two. We know that dealers are processing large amounts of personal data, either as part of their core business, whether that's about customers and the customer life cycle, from prospects right through to customers. But dealers are also processing large amounts of personal data about their employee workforce as well. And that can often include special category data, which is particularly sensitive in nature and warrants a higher degree of protection. So what we're seeing is an industry that's processing large amounts of personal data. Motor retailers are also doing a lot in the marketing space as well, which comes with its own data protection compliance challenges. And then, as Ben mentioned, we've got a very active regulator in the ICO, so regularly issuing enforcement action, all of which is published via the ICO web pages, so very easily picked up by media outlets as well. So, we're going to be kind of talking a bit about the two, but just wanted to set the scene from a personal data perspective before handing over to Kaspar.
Thank you, Louise. Just talking about some of the trends and vulnerabilities. Louise talked about data protection and personally identifiable information. Of course, that's one category of information that needs to be protected from a cyber perspective. It has an impact from a regulatory perspective, plus a reputational damage on those people as well, so on your customer sentiment. But there's a larger risk at play here when it comes to cyber. Right? Cyber is not only a breach of data; it's potentially also disruption of operations. What are some of the trends? I'm going to stand up because it's just to talk about it. Oh, sorry, you guys were not seeing the same slide that I was having. So some of the trends and vulnerabilities. Within the automotive retail sector, key reliance on technology. If you look around the booth here, there's plenty of technology being integrated into businesses. That's no different to any other sector. All businesses these days have to have technology within them to remain competitive, to get to customers, to create efficiencies, to be able to streamline operations and create value. So what does that mean? It means there's more reliance on technology. If the technology doesn't work, either through ransomware, that means that there's going to be a significant impact, and it's more of a business impact, right? The other part here is going to be the other trend is social engineering. So social engineering, it's not new, right? It's a classic. It's been the kind of initial entry point to many high-profile breaches over the years. What's the difference with it now? The scale at which it's happening and the sophistication at which it's happening is much more advanced. When you talk about things like, M&S, Co-op, a lot of that was related to this. We were dealing with other customers in the retail sector. We were all seeing a lot more sophisticated, attacking or social engineering a retail outlet, pretending to be head office, and vice versa, eliciting information, getting sensitive information, and then compromising accounts. It's a significant thing, a trend that is going to continue. I'll link it to one of the other blocks there, obviously the use of AI, because this is quite inexplicably linked. What is a conversation about technology or cyber without a conversation about AI? But AI brings immense benefits to organizations through the use of it, but it also creates a risk to organizations, right? Both from what the threat actors are using it for, so creating quicker, more realistic, harder to spot phishing emails, to vishing, voice synthesized, simulating a CEO, deepfake posts on social media, on the internet. A lot of that is happening out there, and that's, from what we're seeing at the clients that we're supporting, that's quite significant. Similarly, the amount of phishing emails are increasing because the bad guys effectively have an ability to pull out a nice, really easy clickbait, really difficult to spot email quite quickly. By far, one of the biggest areas that we see, in my line of work, where I'm working with customers in a managed detection and response capability, loads of them are dealing with, thankfully for me, breaches related to third parties, So our detection's obviously often detecting them. Thankfully, we haven't had a breach under our watch, but a lot of them are third parties. So third parties. You still have to, either you have to deal with those from a regulatory perspective, but you also need to coordinate with those third parties, which becomes quite tricky. So you need to have an upstream and downstream. And this, again, linking to the first point, is as technologies are integrating more and more, the reliance and the risk exposure related to those third parties is significant. Around third-party dependencies, there's not only technology companies that are being, so technology only, there's full services technologies that are integrated. So let's say use like a Salesforce, for example. That is a technology company, but it's a CRM company, a CRM solution that is a compromise, and there was a significant vulnerability in it, affects multiple organizations, and there's complexities around that. And how do you really coordinate with that third party to understand what they're doing about it, and more importantly, what you need to do about it? Identity is the new perimeter. That's also not necessarily that new, but it's going to continue. As we start using more SaaS, more cloud-based solutions, there's less firewall. There is firewalls below it, but there is more identity. So identity theft is happening, and there's a load of threat actors that are getting into people's organization purely by either using breach data that's out there already and targeting those SaaS platforms because people reuse passwords, right? So, and that's only likely to continue more. What are some of the key things or some of the learnings around some of those breaches, the high-profile breaches? Those are the ones we always like to talk about. Resilience is key, right? So you can't really have a strategy that is totally on protection. You want to be able to prevent, but you have to be able to detect and respond. So you have to be able to and recover on the other side of it. And I'm using the NIST vernacular if those who are aware of it, but you need to be able to do that. How many of you in your organizations have done a simulation exercise in the past year? A handful of you, that's good. What is the key outcomes from that? From our perspective, we run a lot of these, particularly since those profile breaches. Most of the time, you find significant issues or gaps within your processes, because a lot of times your technologies and your processes are put together in separation. The simulations are really useful to understand what gaps are, but more importantly, it also, if you involve the right audiences, really is helpful to get the elevation around the risk and what it means to them. So a lot of those, that's a key thing that we're saying to the market, but it's a lot of what organizations are doing because they know that they need to be able to have more resilience. So some of the trends, obviously, as there's more data being collected, consumer data that's being collected now needs to be protected. The other side of it is threat actors are also using that, obviously, as an additional leverage point. So we all would have heard about the JLR incident or M&S largely being ransomware, but there's also extortion, right? So information is taken, threat actors are taking it to extort and elicit the ransom payouts. And also the fact that obviously there is still complex systems out there, there's still legacy systems out there. That's not necessarily only true for automotive industry, it's across all sectors. That's what causes, obviously, the significant vulnerabilities. What are some of the common themes from incidents? So this is certainly some of the ones that we've seen high profile, but also some of the ones that we've had to deal with. Our incident response teams support organizations in. Ransomware groups are the ones that hit the high-profile news because those are the ones that have the biggest impact, of course, because that's disabling operations plus stealing information. The interesting thing about ransomware, just in general anyway, is that it opens up a large number of additional sectors to being targets. So historically, organizations say, I'm not really in a high-risk sector, why would a threat actor target me? A lot of times they can access you and still, if they compromise systems, they can deploy ransomware, and then there is a motivation to pay. So more organizations, and particularly this is across all sizes of organizations, all sectors. It's not a risk that's focused on one specific one. Business email compromise is on the rise. This is probably by far the highest volume of incidents we encounter in our incident response teams, just purely because of the ease at which it happens. So AI links, emails, compromise third parties. We're surprised at how effective it is in terms of once you've compromised an email, what you can do with it, right? You can use it to phish other organizations. You can have third-party organizations being phished out to externally. We've seen them for a myriad of different events, so it's quite significant. Social engineering is still the key entry point. It is always, it's a common analogy around the tech is growing to defend against the threats. It's easier to circumvent the human being because we're easier to trick sometimes in the new solutions, but that is only increasing. And it's only increasing in sophistication with the use of AI. Breaches of third parties are becoming more commonplace. I've already spoken about that one. Concentration risk. This is really interesting in terms of the key SaaS providers, or key cloud providers. So how many people are not within one of the big three? So Azure, GCP, or AWS. Historically, you would create availability zones and separations across create some redundancy, but there's been more incidents of an AWS down or an Azure having some issues or GCP issues. Not one of them has had those. Thankfully, none of those are necessarily cyber compromises, largely reported as human error, still cyber related, but this has impacts for both their cloud providers plus all the other SaaS providers on top of them. So there's a significant impact across all sectors, across all organizations. Interesting challenge around that is how is that going to play into people's strategies? Because it's quite a significant risk to try and deal with. A lot of the time, also talking back to the simulations, a large number of organizations are not really ready to recover should they have to, specifically in large-scale organizations, right? You can see that from a JLR, from an M&S. The larger the scale, the more difficult it is to recover. The more interdependencies on-prem versus cloud, it becomes more difficult to recover. Do you want to just hand over to Louise to talk about these?
Yeah, fab. Thank you. So I guess just to sort of join the dots between, an organisation experiencing a cyber attack of some sort, that resulting in a data breach. A lot of the kind of potential impacts for motor retailers as a result of this are fairly kind of self-explanatory, but I think it's useful just to call some out as well. Obviously, the first is the kind of financial loss arising from a regulatory penalty or enforcement action, and Ben highlighted some really interesting examples, as well as the number of enforcement actions taken in the last year as well. So, as I said, we've got a very active regulator in the ICO, but there's potential financial implications as a result of a fine. There's also financial loss arising from lack of system access, inability to carry out day-to-day operations, and we've mentioned the JLR example a couple of times already, but there's potential implications there in the event of a cyber attack as well. I think if we think about the reputational angle, there's a lot of emphasis on consumer trust, and that being a key driver for organisations, and one of the potential impacts of a cyber attack resulting in a data breach is that potential loss of trust, and could it lead to some of your customers potentially taking their business elsewhere? So again, that's another potential risk and potential impact to consider. And then the final one, which I've already alluded to, is just around that kind of regulatory risk. So the ICO has a number of enforcement powers at its disposal. Issuing fines is just one, but it also has the power to enforce an organisation to stop processing personal data in a certain way, or to take proactive steps to address certain issues. The ICO has the power to issue individual prosecutions and also audits as well. And all of these, once they're in the public domain, again, that feeds into the reputational aspect as well. So Yeah, I think just worth calling out some of the potential impacts there for motor retailers to be thinking about in this space.
I mean, the impact here is really the reason why this has become a top business risk for most organizations cross sector. There isn't a sector that we work in that doesn't have cyber as a top at least top 3, if not top 2 type risk. So that's the reason.
And just to add to that, I mean, the Institute of Internal Auditors highlighted cyber as one of the top risks in the last year, and has done for the last few years as well. So.
Yep.
And then, just conscious that we're almost at time, we just wanted to close with a couple of considerations. Kaspar, do you want to talk to the cyber considerations?
I've covered quite a lot of these, but resilience in technology is critical to being competitive. Or reliance on technology is critical to being competitive, but the threat landscape is evolving, and it will always be evolving. That means, and then there also needs to be a focus on resilience. I spoke about it before. You need to have a holistic cyber response, a cyber framework, because focusing just on prevention is not effective. Detection and response and recovery is equally as important these days. You need to incorporate third-party risk based on the amount of use of third parties, use of cloud services needs to be included, and you need to have an evolving security posture. You need to be able to keep in pace. Threats are evolving, you need to evolve with those. That's generally what we're seeing out there. To cover the broad spectrum of risk, there could be some more nuanced ones, but that's the kind of generic.
Yeah, and then from my perspective, from a data protection perspective, I think just really important to ensure that you've got your data breach reporting procedures up to date, and that you've stress tested those, and that you've got your kind of assessment included in terms of how we're assessing breaches for severity, which will then determine the next steps, whether that's regulatory reporting within the 72 hours as required. And then also ensuring from an awareness perspective, firstly, that you've got that data protection awareness training throughout the employee life cycle, but also that some of those processes where key time limits apply are firstly defined and then widely understood by the workforce as well. So that concludes our discussion.
Lovely.
Thank you, our presentation.
Brilliant, thank you. Teza, could you just give a touch on your overview of the issues that we've discussed today, risks and mitigations from a Tekion point?
Absolutely, thank you. Yeah, so broadly, I think a lot of good discussions, right? As you approach your own cybersecurity journey, what becomes important is you operate in an ecosystem which has a lot of third parties. With the advent of AI, the third parties rely on fourth parties. What I mean by that is you may be working with a third party, but if they use a DeepSeek or some other data model to provide you're kind of exposing yourself to a larger set of risks. So taking all of that into consideration becomes very important, because while you use AI as a big buzzword right now, the true cyber risk, privacy risks are becoming more and more relevant. From a privacy standpoint, you have these models which train on a lot of data, and it's not easy to go back and tell them I'm going to delete this data and retrain them. It's not computationally not possible. So you got to take a lot of this into consideration as we move forward.
Thank you. Any questions? You know what to do. There is a roving microphone. Please take advantage of that in the next few minutes. I've got a question. Should there be, and it's been raised by Jim Seiko, well-known industry person in the industry, and through AM particularly, he said there should be, or suggesting there should be, an industry standard for cybersecurity, sort of a kite mark, a kind of a training standard within businesses. What's your feeling about that? Is it just it's so blindingly obvious it's surprising we haven't done it yet, or is it just something that is impractical?
I can answer that one. You'd like to have that. You'd like to have a standard that everybody should adhere to. The reality around it is cyber is different, and the risk is different to every different organization. There are fundamentals that you can get to, which actually kind of, you can use like certification schemes, like Cyber Essentials. That is a certification scheme, but it's got a series of standards that will address a lot of fundamental risks. But because it's different and people have different budgets, it's quite difficult to go and say everybody has to have this same benchmark, because you've got to deal with organizations of different sizes, different industries, different risk profiles. So I would like to say yes, but the reality and the practicalities of that is quite challenging. So that's why largely there isn't. Most of them are risk management and risk based, right?
Yeah, I grinned because I find Cyber Essentials is great, but I also think it's madness that we, or at least UK government, the NCSC, stipulate the things that you need regardless of your size of organisation. I helped a well-known beer brand recently get basic fundamentals in cybersecurity in, and they came to me saying, we need Cyber Essentials, we might actually need Cyber Essentials Plus. I turned around to them and said, probably need about 10% of what Cyber Essentials gives you. They were willing to throw about 30, 40 grand at it. And as soon as I said, well, actually, you could do with this, you need these few things, but the rest of this, just take it as and when you need it. You don't need to spend that now. You can invest that money into other areas of the business. I spoke a couple of months ago in Cheltenham, where I live, with a lot of government NCSC there to kind of almost make a point and say, we need almost something that gives that guidance. And as you were saying, there's so many nuances to it, to each organisation. You can't just blanket say there has to be a kind of rule. I'd say just having foundational security in place, and what I mean by that is the pure basics is a really good starting point. And you're doing more than what 80, 90% of other small, medium, even large-sized organisations are doing.
Do you want a view on that?
No, I agree with
Kerr?
whatever. Yeah.
Okay. What different? So cybersecurity has been a kind of a problem in my business. We get regular training. I think it might be 6 monthly, and it all feels very familiar. But what difference will AI make to the kind of the level of threat to businesses? So, I mean, one thing I think about is like personalised sort of threats to the business. So the AI, the model could learn more about me personally and tailor the messages. The social engineering suddenly becomes a lot more personal to me, as opposed to kind of like we're just going to throw this hand grenade and it might hit someone in the business. Is that potentially a risk, or is it already a risk?
So, I mean, I would absolutely, it is a risk. The how is AI going to be a threat to us is actually totally up to the creativity of the guys out there using it. That's the reality, right? What can businesses use it to get insights in data, to automate specific solutions, to automate specific manual tasks? All of those are benefits that we're getting from AI right now. The bad guys are doing the same thing. They can use it to make more realistic emails. They can go phishing voice synthesizers. They can start doing things like multi-channel attacks. So like, you know, if you went to, here's a phishing email, please click on this and pay this invoice, followed by a phone call that sounds like your CEO. Most of us are trained to be follow up with a phone call. If you're getting a proactive phone call from somebody and they've got a database on that, more likely to get through. Similarly, there's other things around, you know, I don't do this, but we've got a team obviously that does pen testing. They do the same things. They use AIs to increase what they can do. You know, if you've got a database of credentials that you can use, so known leaked credentials, plus you have a bunch of known information about people's identity, you could actually have a database of identities that you could start defrauding people at scale because you've got automation. There is, I mean, these are, it sounds like doom and gloom, but there is it is an evolutionary process, right? There is, bad guys will be creative, defenses will be creative, and it will go like that.
It's an arms race.
How it gets to.
Is it increasing in intensity though?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to sound all doom and gloom, but with the use of AI, the volume of phishing emails and and how difficult it is to spot them is only increasing. But there are solutions out there to help you spot those and create nuances, and they will now become AI-generated or AI solutions to help spot what an AI fake would look like, because humans are less trained with it, and we haven't had enough time with it really. But we'll also then we'll get trained on how to look for them. Sometimes AI gives you great output, but sometimes you can actually spot an AI output, right? But that takes some time and experience with it.
Teza, do you have a view on the...
No, agree with a lot of points there, right? Like the providers are doing a great job too. Like on one side you have a lot of targeted phishing, but you see companies like Google putting in a lot more into securing their infrastructure. But where the risk is kind of expanding is the attack vectors are now to your phones, to your social media. So there's a lot of correlation that happens between different channels, which kind of makes it more sophisticated. So they could literally know that you are traveling from place A to place B and make it very sophisticated around that. And if large companies have a lot of machinery to protect against this, it's the mid-market, small and medium businesses which are more susceptible to some of these attacks, which is concerning.
I'd come to Louise if you got anything you want.
Nothing further to add.
I'd say it's more of a threat to my sanity than the amount of conversations I have with people about it. Yeah, like with anything, you've got to stay up to date. It's learning quickly. It's in the hands of attackers who are using it faster than we can use it because they don't have kind of hoops to jump through. I read an article recently about a deepfake attack where an entire board meeting was deepfaked, and a kind of employee was asked to join the board meeting, and they pretended that they couldn't hear her and sent her a link and said, "Oh, look, we're all gonna move off Teams. I'm gonna go into this meeting here. Can you come to it?" She went to it, and that link kind of downloaded ransomware and spyware and shut them out. But there's all sorts. It's just if you can stay as up to date as possible. And understand that it could happen, and looking at more of less of a reactive approach, but more of okay, this is potentially going to happen to us in the near future. What does it look like if we unplug this and we suddenly have nothing? So resiliency planning is a massive thing, and particularly from my time at Tesco, it's a massive part of my role was looking at, okay, well, if we unplug this from the supply chain, or if this vendor went down or this supplier went down, what does that look like for us? And it is really interesting because it gets teams really thinking about it and kind of understanding, okay, shit, like, what does that mean for us? And it was great because Co-op and M&S happened kind of in a time where we were doing that. So we were able to almost see it play out. I say it was great. It was horrendous for obviously all of those teams and people working in those organizations, but you could see it literally playing out firsthand, and how it evolved from there.
Excellent. Oh, you have two questions. Lady at the back first, please.
Thank you. Very, very interesting conversation. We talked about AI a lot, obviously, from a risk perspective, from cyber criminals perspective, but there is a lot of interest between employees to use AI tools for their individual efficiency or for business processes, and this also poses a lot of risk to the business. So what would be your recommendations for any organization, how to deal with this risk, how to engage with employees on this topic? Because this is something I personally look into now, and it's an interesting area and very, very potentially risky area.
Yeah.
Who wants to pick that one?
I've got a pretty simple one that I just use is if it were to be found at a bus stop, if the information was to be found at a bus stop by somebody that you don't know, don't put it into AI or an AI model. If you left your bag out somewhere and somebody pulled out a file or a document with that information on it, if you would be concerned about them having that information, it shouldn't be going into an AI tool. But it is a valid concern, and I think more organizations need to do a better job of understanding what that looks like, but also giving the right guidance. I think a lot of people are potentially too worried about slowing down processes of people doing things quicker now, or giving the wrong advice, but even giving some kind of guidance is better than none at all, where it leaves it open to kind of a bit of a free-for-all for anybody to do anything.
Yeah. I'll answer that same one. It's the challenge with AI actually is the level of knowledge that teams have, whether it's tech teams or whether it's business teams, and knowing that, right? So we have this at lots of our clients where management is struggling. How do we understand what the governance model is? Which ones should we and shouldn't we use? But the teams are already using it, right? So people are using it because it adds benefit to their day, it makes their lives easier. They get insights from it, right? We all do it. I use the same thing. Guidance is right. Is giving people some guidance around it. You should ideally get to a level of these are sanctioned AI services versus unsanctioned ones, because they're the ones that you know that you're going to use, right? You know something about. You don't know if somebody's using something that they don't know and what data they're using around it. So the challenge comes into which data can I use in an AI engine and where can't I? Because what's to say you can't go to an AI engine and say, what are the top, use it as a research tool. There's limited risk in that. The risk is going to be, I've seen this, Southred Intel has picked this up, large scale organization, somebody took their external facing router config, chucked it into AI, it landed up in Pastebin with a whole bunch of passwords in it. So there's guidance around do's and don'ts. And actually what's happening out there in the industry is solutions are generally going to, let's find AI services that people are using and find them and guide them to the right ones. And then you have some guidance around what you can and can't do. Strategically, if you're using sensitive information that you don't want shared, you shouldn't be putting it into a public AI because you don't know what that's going to. But it takes knowledge. It takes knowledge and understanding for that. The small organizations are going to struggle more with this because they don't have the tech capabilities. Outsource some of those, but you need to get a level of understanding. But I'd say guidance and understanding is the most important.
Thank you. Tekion, would you like to?
Yeah, I think a lot of what I notice is there's a lot of training and reinforcement, of course, but you need a governance model on the top where if you have a blanket policy of saying you can't use an AI, a tool, everybody is going to not follow that because you have a mobile phone, you have laptop, everything. It's better to give some guidance on what can be used and constantly revisit that. And the same rules, you don't want PII somewhere else, you don't want PII in your AI tools, so that applies broadly to the whole organization. So,
Thank you. A question down the front? Sorry, go ahead.
Can I just add one little footnote to that, which is that I would actually go beyond the use of the term guidance, and I would actually use the word policy. So actually defining a AI usage policy for employees that defines those guardrails that we've just mentioned in terms of which applications are permitted and how and what data should be used within those applications. I've worked with a few clients that have implemented an AI policy that will say you cannot use personal data in this, even though it is like a ring-fenced system, but just something that really kind of reinforces that. I think from when things go wrong, organizations tend to look at policies in terms of what's the kind of requirement rather than maybe guidance, which might feel a bit more optional. So I think that's what I would add to that.
Cool.
An important question from my side, hello everyone, is how to raise people awareness, because everyone hears about JLR. I've been working in JLR for several years and I was trying to push some status quos, change people's mindset, which was pretty difficult. But how we can change people being rather proactive than reactive? I think we can see here it's pretty good audience, but if you compare it with different meetings, it was full. You couldn't get inside. So it means that it's a lovely discussion. Actually, there are not many people. It's lovely to see you guys, that you understand how important it is. But I think it's such a topic that everyone is very reactive. How can we change maybe something in the mindset of people to be more proactive, to do something about it? But actually, it affects all of us. Really.
Great question. Who'd like to start?
I guess it goes back to what I said. Like, they might be aware, doesn't mean that they care. I don't actually think it's an awareness thing, if I'm completely honest. And I'm not going to coin this as my own thing. I saw it actually from somebody I've worked closely with in the past. They said you wouldn't go to a board meeting now and cybersecurity not be mentioned as a thing. People are aware, they know, but it's this attitude of like, oh, it'll never happen to us, or like, why would they go for us? It's not. It's a care thing. And I was literally going to say the same thing. Like, thank you very much, all of you, for coming, because it clearly shows that it's an important thing to you. But the talk beforehand, this auditorium was full. Does that not say to you about the state of where we're at from cybersecurity? And I think it's potentially a legacy thing. cybersecurity was always a thing that was like, yeah, well, kind of, it'll be an afterthought. But I can guarantee if you go and speak to the execs and the cybersecurity team at JLR now, they will be saying, we wish we spent more on it, doing it, understanding it before this happened. It's too late at that point, which is really hard. But I do understand that it's a difficult argument to go to ask for money when there's no direct. You go to a marketing team and you go, I need 600 grand, and actually we're going to see this return on investment. Board would be like, yeah, absolutely, go for it. If you walk over and go from cybersecurity and go, we need 1.4 million for this tooling, it's not going to make you any money, but it's going to stop us from this. We'll be like, no, you're right. We'll give it to the marketing team because we know it's going to make us money. So it's a really hard balance, but this is going to sound ageist, and it's not. I believe that there is a first impressions kind of psyche at play here, that cybersecurity was always the brakes of the business. Like, you can't do this, you mustn't do this, do your security training. So people just have this opinion of like, why do I need to do that? Why would I invest in it? I think it needs a renewed energy and a renewed kind of perspective of it. The last year has seen it become more of a thing because it's directly impacted people in their daily lives. Go to M&S, go to the co-op, and you see that the shelves were empty, or you couldn't use your Sparks card. People are suddenly going, oh, I can't use my Sparks card now, that's awful. Why? Oh, cybersecurity. They are much more aware of it, but they really care at the moment. So, yeah, I'd love to chat to you afterwards because, yeah, it'd be interesting to kind of just discuss it a bit more.
I mean, I would say awareness within an organization is a whole topic on its own, because the awareness needs to go to every employee, right? Like, every employee has a responsibility. What makes an employee care about it? They're less likely. But most of the time, what it actually is, it's a budgetary thing, right? What we've found is one of the most impactful things, and that's why I said simulations, because we know, because cybersecurity is a risk, right? Risk is something that you've got to invest in to make sure that something bad doesn't happen. You're always going to focus on things that make you profit. That's just the nature of business, right? It's arguably why cyber criminals are effective, because they're profit driven, whereas organizations are cost minimizing, right? So what we have found quite effective is for those organizations, because when you see these mainstream media articles, people have the fear factor, but a simulation exercise is really impactful, because then you have decision makers who have the access to go, this is a budget, go understanding what they would need to do and are they ready, and they need to then answer some of those questions, which I find is very impactful to understand gaps, and then go, gee, well, this could really be the impact for me, maybe we need to put some budget in for it. There'll always be a cost benefit, and you will always have to trade off, because that's the nature of business, but if you get that this could happen to you and it could be real, and you have to make this decision. Do you pay the ransom? Do you not pay the ransom? You pay the ransom, it doesn't work. Some execs haven't been in that situation. I guarantee you that everybody that has been in that situation, they come out with loads more grey hair or no hair, and they will tell you, I wish I had spent some more. So simulation is very effective for that.
So it may be better to expose people to more simulations, to work, practice, training all the time, just to make sure that they remember. Yeah. And then you don't have to do it annually, and it doesn't have to be, but they generally it's quite well received, because then they can go, and as long as it's made relevant, if it's made relevant to their business and made it, like, if this arm of your business is down and it does this, a real scenario is very impactful.
We've got to wrap it up, but thank you ever so much to our panel. Please show your appreciation. Thank you.